So you want to get into the animation industry, but you don't know where to start. Yes, the standard animation industry is extremely hard to get into. However, part of why so many students end up not getting into animation as a career is because they have no idea how the actual production pipeline works for the major film studio systems. For this example, I'll be going over the standard Hollywood structure of the animation industry. The major Hollywood studios are Disney, Universal Pictures, Warner Bros., Paramount Pictures, and Sony Pictures. However, the Big Five will soon be becoming the Big Four, with Warner Bros. Studio merging with another studio, but that's for a whole other video. Just know indie films and animation are just studios that are not part of this system. So they can be big like A24 or small like an animation student with an LLC submitting to film festivals, but either way, those are considered indie animations. Since the indie animation industry is exploding right now, I'll be making a whole separate video on that, but this is just going to be a brief outline of how the major film animation studios work, what jobs you can get in the production pipeline. For animation, the production pipeline works similarly to this graphic. Each one is a whole career in its own. So your job as a student is to figure out which one you want to build a portfolio around. And let me just say this for all my students, make sure you have a portfolio and make sure it looks industry standard, whether you go into indie animation or freelance or just the major studios, it should be up to par, meaning you have all your basic fundamentals in whatever field you're going in. Now, there are three different sets of animation jobs. Jobs for film, so movies like the recently released Avatar, The Last Airbender, Super Mario, and Avatar. Jobs for TV, so shows like Bob's Burgers, X-Men 97, and Gravity Falls. And jobs for advertising. Only be going over the first two, but I definitely recommend checking out animation jobs for advertising. It's its own very big lucrative market. And there will also be differences even further down the line for 2D animation versus 3D animation. But for now, we'll only be going over the major jobs in the Hollywood studios for TV and film. Now, the first thing that they don't tell you is if you want to work in the US, which is at the studio, your options for starting out are almost all going to be pre-production. This is due to union busting back in the day and studios shipping production and post-production to Canada and overseas studios. So your options are script writing, background, layout artist, character design, visual development, storyboarding and storyboarding revisionist, animatic editors, FX animation, and so on. You can also get your foot in the door working as a production assistant. However, we're sticking to jobs that you're building a portfolio around. You can also check out the animationguild.org and see all the studios that are part of the union. For 3D animation and 2D animation, you'll also have options such as modeling, texturing, rigging, and setup, animation, VFX, lighting, and composition. However, this type of work is typically done in Canada or UK studios. Occasionally, freelancers may also be hired for the positions as well, since remote work is much more accessible. That all depends on the studio that you are looking to apply for. 2D animators, studios overseas, like in the UK and Korea, are typically hired to work on shows, but there are also freelancers who are hired to work on episodes as well. Again, it's about how well your portfolio is tailored to the specific job and who notices you. Now, if you actually want to do animation, storyboarding is the closest to actual animation you will get in this pipeline if you're planning on staying in the US and working for one of the major studios. Character designing is the hardest and most competitive, and background and visual development are typically many people's starting point. However, you can have a long and successful career in visual development or layout as well. That is one of the frustrating parts about the animation industry compared to other industries, which is not only is it very hard to get into, there are many ways that you can get into the animation industry, which sounds good on paper, but it can feel very gatekeeping and classist at times. Personally, I've heard from some storyboard artists that it's easier to become a doctor than to become a storyboard artist for one of the major studios. But again, this all relates to how well you tailor your portfolio and also location. If you're looking for classes to help you build your portfolio, I personally recommend checking out Schoolism in Project City, which centers around pre-production work, Andy Bean Kung, who offers storyboarding classes, Steven Silver, who provides classes on character design, Eat Your Peas that provides animation training and coaching for production work, and Animation Mentor for 3D animation. Aaron Blaze Creature Animation is where I suggest starting out the most. Not only does he have classes for complete beginners to advanced professionals, he also is the most affordable and provides solid foundations. Class on perspective saved my portfolio. Again, look into each job and see which one you can build a portfolio around, and most importantly, which one you feel motivated to build a portfolio around. See what tools you'll need and who the industry professionals are who is sharing advice on social media. You can also look up how much they pay and what benefits you can receive by going to the Animation Guild's website. Most of these jobs will be listed in Burbank, California area when it comes to pre-production. You can also find some work in other areas like Texas as well as New York City. Just keep in mind that it'll be even more scarce and even more competitive compared to just going to California and the Burbank area. Ever since the pandemic, since more studios have been more willing to do remote work with people, but again, it all comes down to how well your portfolio is tailored to the work that they're looking for, as well as who you've connected with in person and online. Lastly, you're going to want to make a LinkedIn account. Make sure to keep it clean and professional, but that's where you're going to want to put most of your portfolio updates and where you can put your networking skills to goodly use. I've also seen people use Twitter for networking and building their portfolio. However, I just personally don't really like it, both as a social media platform and as a platform for where you're putting out work. Personally, I've gotten more feedback over on LinkedIn. I can also make a quick video going over how you can use social media to help you find work in the industry. But again, that feels like a more separate video. This is just what jobs in the pipeline you can tailor a portfolio around. I hope this brief overview of the standard animation industry helped you guys a lot in deciding where exactly you want to fit in on the pipeline, or if you are looking for other avenues to find work in the creative field. And lastly, for all my students, I definitely recommend submitting to animation festivals. Whether you're going into indie animation or the standard animation route, film festivals are a great networking opportunity and the best place to showcase your skills, especially if you have a chance to work with a small group of other students. It shows that not only are you able to work with other people, you can work with other people in a creative setting. Well, that's all for now. I hope this helped, and if I missed anything, feel free to let me know in the comments. Oh my gosh, guys, I completely forgot to mention the gaming animation industry, which in itself is a completely separate industry when it comes to film and TV. However, gaming is such a huge market from indie games to mainstream games that I will also be making separate videos when it comes to describing their pipelines and how you can get into it and just some of the ways that you can create your own indie games in order to build your portfolio. Right here is just a brief example of what the animation pipeline is versus the game development pipeline. Just know that you can also make games in 2D and in 3D. Gaming is a huge animation industry, and I'm so sorry I forgot that part. Okay, bye.